Okay, so let's finish up with this little example of reading in a file. I just want to go through and read one word in at a time and then print it out one word at a time. Just something simple like that. The problem is, do I know how many words are going to be in the file? Is there a word count? In fact, let's go back and see if there's a word count. I don't see one, and I don't think there is one. But if I wanted to count, for example, the number of words, let's go ahead and do that. Maybe that'll be a better example. Right now, I have no idea. Currently, in this file, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 words. But that could change based on any file, right? And so what I want to do is just go in and read in a word until there are no other words, and then I'll just create an integer variable called the count, and I'll set it equal to 0 to begin with. Well, I want to read in a word, so let me do this. If I just do a file in.next to read in a word, and let's say I do this, I just went and counted them, so I happen to know that I can start at 1 and go, well, I is less than or equal to 15, because that's how many words are in there that I counted. So I'm going to go read in the number of words, and then I'll just, when I read it in, I'll print it out. You have to read it into the word, sorry. Okay, and then I'll print out what's in the word. So I'm going to do this 15 times. Read in the word, print out whatever's in the word. So this is some text. This is also some text. Here's a third line just for fun. Okay, that's doing that. Well, what happens if I try and read in the 16th word? My program is going to crash and die because I've tried to read in a word when there's nothing left in the buffer. Back to our little example, when we get to the end of this, wow, that is a mess. When we get to the end of this buffer and everything's come out, right, there's nothing left to read in, and then we try and read something in, we're going to get an error, which we did. So I can't really use a for loop because it's not definite. I don't know exactly how many words there are going to be in any given file. So what can I do? Well, I know it's going to need to be a while loop because we could do a do while loop, but are we sure there's going to be one word in there? What if we get a blank file? And so we only want to read in a word if there is a word to read. Well, one of the nice things that the scanner has given us in Java is that we can say while the file in anything like a next or next line or next double or next int, any one of those has a counterpart that is a has next. Okay, so if there is a next, or if there is a next int, or if there is a next double, we can go and look before we actually do the read in to see, is there something there to read in? And so I say, while there has next, then we're going to read it in. If there doesn't have a next, then we're not going to read it in. And if we run this program, then it will read all the way down to the end of the row, the line, the last line, so all the way down to fun here. And that's the last thing it reads in, because it will only read in while there is a next. Okay, so just remember that. The has next int, has next double is very valuable to be able to go look before we read it in to see if it's actually there. On that same line, we could actually avoid errors. Instead of using a try catch to avoid errors, we could avoid errors by just saying, while there is a double, then read in the double. And if there's not a double, then don't read it in. Anyway, so let's go ahead and implement this count now. So rather than reading a word in and then printing it out, I'll read it in, but then I'm just going to increment the count by 1 every time there's a word to be read in. And then at the very end of the program, I guess I ought to print out down here, system.out.println, number of words, and then concatenate on my count after it's completed running. So if I compile and run this, then I say the number of words there is 15. Let me go change this to something else. I gotta think of something good here to type. Let's just grab some text. How about that? If I go out here and say Gettysburg Address, text. Oh, here's the full text for the Gettysburg Address. Let's see how many words this is. Okay, so I'm going to take and copy all this. Is that the whole thing? Okay, I thought it was longer than that. Okay, so I'll dump this in. Very famous 7 years ago, right? And so I've saved that now, and if I come back into my program and run this word counter, it'll go through and tell me it ran through 262 words in this text. Just one at a time, going through, reading in the next word, and then counting it, and as they're going in, they're being read out of the buffer, right? Each one. So we have our, in fact, if I knew what I was doing here, I would clear this. So we've got this, what color's let me get a different color here. Okay, so we've got our buffer. So we've got 4, score, and 7, and so on. Okay. Those words are being read in one at a time and out of the buffer. This one's read in, out of the buffer. This one's read in, out of the buffer. Each time we do that motion, then we're counting one more word in our program. And so we get to the end and we say, how many did we read out while we had a next line? And the answer in this case is 262. So that's the idea of this buffer and reading in information from the buffer. And of file input generally. We can take this basic principle of building a file object, attaching a scanner to it, and then in conjunction with a loop, we can do just a ton of different things with file manipulation. And so I'm trying to this is very exciting. I don't feel like I've made it exciting enough. So maybe we'll run through a couple of examples to help out with things that we could do. But that's pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, to be able to read in how many words are in a file, we do that just by looping through one at a time, looking what's in the buffer, counting, and then printing the count. All right? Very good. Spencer out.